Neeta. Good
Hi, good
morning.
morning.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I think we're all in different time zones.
And that's the
Mm.
beauty of this technology.
Yes, and thank you so much for joining us. I thought today we'll take a trip down a very different path than we usually do. You're one of the rare people that I know I have met who worked on paper and textiles and even philanthropy in a very, very different way. So, as a quick introduction, Neeta is someone who's done yeoman's work in the area of craft, paper, lots of things, and art in general, a big patron of the arts. And she's going to be doing a lot more things in the future, which we'll talk about in another 3 months. But today's conversation, Neeta, I thought we'll talk about something you've done in the past, and
Okay.
some of it you've kind of turned over to someone else. But I wanted to specifically take you back in time, into 1992 to the Rio Earth Summit, and something stirred you in that place that started your journey on paper, if I remember correctly. Tell me about what was it like to be at the Rio Earth Summit, and what did you hear?
I wasn't at the summit. I just happened to see in the newspaper a
Ah, okay.
cartoon of
Okay.
the last tree being cut down and taken away to a factory to be made into paper to publish the results of the Rio conference. And I thought, yes, I knew the paper was made from trees, but I knew that in India we didn't always cut down trees. There had been a tradition before that. So it was only the trigger, and that led
Got
me
it.
down a huge journey that I didn't expect to go on. And it was
Right.
very exciting because our wedding invitations were made on handmade paper. That was the only other link that I
Mm-hmm.
could put together. And then then I started looking into handmade paper in India and realized that we were making paper using cotton waste, not because we worried about the environment, but of necessity, because in India we don't waste. We reuse
Mm-hmm.
everything. And that's how the journey began.
So tell me a little bit more about that. We don't cut trees, but we are doing it from cotton waste. So tell me a little bit about what did you find out about paper, the way we
The
made it?
journey actually started in Japan because I decided that if I'm going to be looking at something, I need to see where the best comes from. And at that
Mm-hmm.
time, and even today, Japanese paper is considered the best in the world. And it took
Mm-hmm.
me 2 minutes to learn why. Because
Mm-hmm.
they respect the paper and they respect the paper maker. That's what we
Mm-hmm.
don't do in India. And until
Right.
we do that, it is never going to have the position that it has elsewhere in the world. The only time paper was respected was for the miniature paintings. We all know about miniature paintings. And the
Mm-hmm.
best paper was used for miniature painting. But it
Mm-hmm.
has a
Mm-hmm.
long history, a long tradition, and many different ways of making paper. So that was what
Right.
the journey I went on.
There's something beautiful you said that although paper was used for century to record history, it ironically forgot to record its own. So we have recorded history of the world on paper, but there's hardly any place where we have the history of paper itself. So you actually went and bought a dyeing paper mill in Daulatabad. In fact, a place which made some of the finest paper that was used in the Mughal times in Emperor Jahangir's court. But tell me a little bit about your journey with paper, how you found the paper mill, and why did you want to do something
Gosh, a
about it?
long question. Um,
Yeah.
I I found a book by an American called Dart Hunter, who had traveled all over India, looking and documenting the different traditions of making paper. He'd done that in the 1920s, so I decided in the 1980s to follow his footsteps. And I went back,
Hmm.
except to Kashmir, where it wasn't safe to go. I went
Hmm.
everywhere that he had gone. I recorded exactly, I found exactly what he had found, and it was fantastic. I found descendants of the people that he had spoken to. They showed me photographs that he had taken with them and they still had copies of. It was a wonderful journey. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that took me to Daulatabad, which in the 17th century was famous for the thinness of the paper made there. Now, Japanese paper is thin because it's made of a plant fiber, and it's not so difficult to make thin paper with a plant fiber. But with cotton, to make thin paper is incredibly difficult and an incredibly skilled task. So that was the mill that was my favorite. After that,
Mm-hmm.
I got involved in looking at documents, trying to identify documents, because Western paper has a watermark, but Oriental paper doesn't have a watermark. So you don't know where it came from. So the next few years were spent doing that. In the meantime, at the turn of the century, I found there was a lot more handmade paper on the market. So I was
Mm-hmm.
delighted. I thought the craft has survived. But I thought, let
Mm-hmm.
me make the journey again. So I retraced my footsteps and found everything that I had seen and documented demolished. I have pictures that I took 20 years ago or 10 years ago, and I have pictures of the demolition. So, what happened? Where was this paper coming from? Well, handmade paper had in the meantime been redefined so that a product made entirely by machine, cut by hand, could officially be sold as handmade paper.
No, no, sorry.
That's why,
Say that again. So you're saying it could have been machine made, but just because it's hand cut,
yeah.
somebody
So you
cuts
have a
with hand.
cylinder mold on which the paper is made, and on
Hmm.
the cylinder there's a groove. A man stands with a knife at that groove and cuts it. That makes it handmade paper.
Wow.
That's,
Okay.
and when you do it like that, you get, at least at that time, 2,000 sheets a day, perfect paper. By the time I got involved in the mill in Daulatabad, and incidentally, I did not buy it. It was a cooperative. It was not for sale.
Okay.
I was part of the cooperative. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it took us, it took two men 3 days to make 500 sheets. And of that, you have to reckon a 20% rejection. So if I was doing this as a business, it would never work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
big difference. And I think people are not fussy about the quality of the paper because we're used to using it for maybe less important things.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really my goal to get respect for a product that is so everyday.
So I think, like for example, you take saris. There are saris you wear every day. Then there are ones that take a weaver 1 year to weave, and there is a different price for each of them, and you collect them very differently. You wear them for different occasions. Similarly, paper, 80% of it we use to scribble or doodle or, take notes or whatever. But then whether it's your wedding invitation or whether it is a letter you want. I mean, there was a time when we all wrote letters, and that's why people valued paper. Now we don't write letters. We don't write. I mean, the world has changed so much that the use of paper is not the way it used to be. So, how do you think in this current world, in the way we are, where most of the people don't even write, don't even know how to write? Where is the place for paper which can still be used for maybe how miniature paintings were used, etc.? So, what is the, I mean, this is a bigger question of what is the role of something very traditional, very handcrafted, very beautiful in today's world where the usage has changed.
I've often thought about it. And by the time I took over the mill, or a couple of the vats in the mill in Daulatabad, and we revived them, and at the same time, there'd been the earthquake in Kutch in 2001. So I was originally not planning to do anything with the paper. But then the people that I wanted to help in Kutch were block printers. They printed on
Mhm.
textile. But I didn't have any textile, I had paper. So I said to them, would you print on my paper? They'd never done it before, but they were happy to try. So they
Mhm.
printed on the paper. And that paper, and then I was squatting in my husband's office. I opened a shop and I was trying to create an awareness of the craft. And in
Mhm.
that process, we now had to find a product. So what came about almost spontaneously was gift wrap. and we
Mhm.
had the most
Mhm.
beautiful hand block printed, handmade thin paper that was used for
Mhm.
gift wrap. But everybody
Uh-huh.
who came into the shop said, this paper is so beautiful, I don't want to use it. And then we also suggested them, because the paper was so strong, that if I got a gift wrapped in that paper, I would open it carefully, smooth it out, if necessary, iron it, and reuse it. It's the reusability of the paper that I think is
Mhm.
important. And since then, through COVID, I made all sorts of fun uh, objects. I wouldn't like to call it a work of art, but we have scattered all over our house things made of
Mhm.
paper. And it
Mhm.
just is so easy to do.
Mhm.
It
Yeah.
has an intrinsic beauty of its own that one's got to amalgamate in one's life, for want of a
Yeah.
better expression.
So I think if we said, I mean, this is so representative of so many things today, right? In terms of things that were traditionally preserved, how do we take advantage of them? So if we said, hey, I want to, and I want to buy this gift wrap paper. Now, how do you actually call it hand lifted paper versus handmade paper or so? How do we know it's not just a machine made, hand cut, hand? How do we know the difference between what's
Because
authentic and
machine
what's
made
called
paper
hand?
has a, well, paper has a grain, the way the fibers are laid. So machine made paper has grain going in one direction because the cylinder picked it up in that direction.
Mhm.
Handmade paper doesn't have a grain because of the process, in the process of lifting, and it took me a long time to figure this out. When the man lifts the frame out of the water, he gives it, so he lifts it towards him, and then he gives it a slight shake, up sideways shake. That merges the fibers in both directions, which is why it's much more difficult to tear. So the tear
Mhm.
strength of the paper is really the ultimate proof of
Mhm.
handmade paper.
The other thing I want to go back to, you said, tell me a little bit about, cutting trees making paper versus from cotton waste making paper. Is in India still, is it mostly cotton waste? I mean, waste, or
You
have
know,
we gone to the trees?
well, if you use pure cotton waste, you'd get the strongest paper. Linen is the strongest fiber, and pure cotton waste. But the trouble is, a lot of other fibers are, sorry, I've got, a lot of other fibers are being mixed into the pulp. So the minute you do that, the fibers are shorter and the paper gets weaker.
Mhm.
That's the only difference.
So it's so interesting. So basically, when somebody says cotton, it's not cotton anymore. It has a bunch of other fibers mixed in it. So
Yes,
then when you take the cotton waste, that's not the strongest cotton waste. So you don't get the best paper. So it's sort of at every level, the way we are diluting it makes
absolutely.
it tougher for the next level.
Well, you know, the thing that totally threw me was genetically modified cotton, because I was accustomed to a 20% waste from our paper. And then I
Mhm,
suddenly found it was going up to 30, 40, 50%. That was ridiculous. That shouldn't happen. And by
mhm,
waste, I mean paper that is defective in that it has holes in the middle of the paper. You know, if
mhm,
it's not properly lifted, maybe the edges are not good, but you can't have holes in the middle of the paper. And I couldn't understand why until I discovered that the yarn from genetically modified cotton is slightly looser than yarn from 100% natural cotton, which isn't a
mhm.
problem in fabric. But when you make pulp, that yarn knots. When paper is made using that pulp, the knots fall out, leaving holes in the paper. That's where my holes
Wow.
were coming from.
Wow. So, I just want to, kind of move into the next section, but wrap up this section by saying it's just amazing when you change one thing, when you compromise on one thing, how it affects the whole cycle.
That's what we don't realize.
We don't so when we just said, okay, let's do genetic seeds and fertilizers and all that stuff, we are forgetting that there is a downstream effect, so the yarn that's coming is not as strong as before, and then when you use that
Yeah,
waste to make paper, the paper is not as strong before. So it's, and I think this is a bigger metaphor for things we do in life when we try to shortcut something, when you genetically modify, when you do something, when the natural balance is broken, it affects things down the line. So, I mean, Neeta, I know you have multiple interests. You support the arts, you support the music, and this paper is one thing that took your interest for many, many years. And you have, preserved it more than anyone else. And in fact, I must say, when we had the Ink conference and you were there, we had many workshops, everything from artificial intelligence to cybersecurity to all kinds of things. But the workshop you did of making handmade paper was the one that was sold out with people standing in line, because I think it shows in today's world people want that,
Absolutely.
that experience, that texture, and the ability to, for 2 hours make paper.
The
It's
touch, I
really
think we're forgetting
touch.
our tactile senses. And that's what I find time and again. People
Yeah,
love the feeling that they're
yeah,
creating something.
yeah,
And it's not
yeah.
important, it's pleasure.
Correct. Yeah, yeah. And also, in a very interesting way, you come from a very big, business family, and the Roy Premchand family, and they're like one of the earliest stockbrokers and one of the founders of Bombay Stock Exchange, and obviously totally involved in finance. It supported University of Bombay, JJ School of Arts, etc. And you started Bombay, paper company store in 2001, kind of a stone's throw from Dalal Street, where your ancestors come from, doing something totally different. I think you took on the giving side of the family. But tell me a little bit about these worlds you live in. There is a very, very deep financial background, and your interest has been, and your ancestors' interest has been, still how to use the wealth to bring education to everybody, preserve the crafts, preserve the world. So tell me a little bit about your philanthropic,
Well, first of all,
in,
we've got to remember this is my husband's side of the family. I came
right.
into the family that
Yeah,
has this tradition. And, I think philanthropy is such a big word, Lakshmi. It's one that I don't
right.
like. It's
No,
giving, it's
it's giving.
sharing,
Yeah, it's true.
it's
It's
not a
more
big deal.
sharing than anything else. It's
Yeah.
sharing than anything else. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So tell me a little bit about how did you pick that this sharing is going to be done in music, in crafts, in paper, in these areas,
I think looking
education.
at the future, paper, I can remember very clearly. Our daughter-in-law was pregnant with our first grandchild, and there was paper about to disappear. And I just said, I want him to see it as a living tradition.
Mm-hmm.
There's simple triggers. There's something that's
Right.
happening, and you think, I want them to see this as a living tradition. And that's why museums, I think they are where our history is
Yeah.
collectively stored. We need to understand where we come from. We need to
Mhm.
understand each other. It's keeping the horizons wide open.
Yeah. And you always say that your true love is storytelling. You've written books, and this is about retelling myths from across cultures, like the Manu, Noah, Gilgamesh, etc. So, what drew you to this? What are the kind of stories you love telling, and why these stories?
It's really been a matter of circumstance. The first stories I did was a retelling of the Panchatantra stories, because when my children grew up, they were only available as comics, and I wanted my grandchildren to see them as stories. So that's
Hmm.
why the
Hmm.
Panchatantra. And again, we have to remember that there is wisdom in these stories. There's intrinsic
Absolutely.
wisdom
Yeah.
for life
Hmm.
that a child needs to, that everybody needs to know. And those
Correct.
are amongst the best, and they're the root of so many fairy tales, of the Grimm's fairy tales, of Aesop's fables. They all go
Hmm.
back to the Panchatantra stories. So that was the Panchatantra stories. Then
Okay.
the stories of the myth have a whole different genesis, because that was the time when Europe was being flooded with refugees, and we kept talking about the other, what makes them different from us. And when you look back at our stories, and particularly the stories of the flood, we all share the same stories. We
Mm-hmm.
need to remember that we go back to the same origins. So that's why, and since I did those stories, they've come out again as When Land Becomes Water, because that's what it was all about. It was a
Mm-hmm.
flood that came to cleanse the world every
Mm-hmm.
time we were going down the wrong path. So there's something
Yeah.
cyclical about it. And then
Right.
I've
Yeah.
done books for the museum where I'm simplifying things for children because I love that. It helps
Right.
me
Yeah.
understand for myself what this is
Uh-huh.
about if I've got to verbalize it.
I mean, in some ways, it's keeping up the history and communicating it in a way that it's accessible. And also, I wanted to talk a little bit about your books. They're all printed on handmade paper. Tell us a little bit about the unique illustrations and the production style of your books. It's not just the content, but the quality also. You spent a lot of time on those.
Because I don't like compromise. Wherever possible, I want the integrity of the product to remain. So the ones that were affordable were done on handmade paper, but the minute the market gets bigger, it was not affordable anymore. And the
Hmm.
illustration I did because I love working with waste. I have bags of scraps of paper, and I can sit for hours doing things with it. So it happened organically, Lakshmi.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, there was no
And,
great thought went into it. It was just
right.
nice. And if that's all you sense, then you're getting the message.
Right. And also, I think, true innovation, true amazing things happen not because somebody planned it for 5 years and then executed it.
Precisely.
You just go along. You kind of, grab as you turn around and say, oh, this looks good. And you just keep adding. And I don't know, in a conscious way, and that's sort of what results,
When I
I
started
think.
the journey,
Yeah.
I honestly thought I was going to open a door and then go into a room, and then there'd be another door that I'd go through, and so on. But it wasn't like that at all. You open a door, go into a room, and there's 7 doors. Which one do you open? You go into another
Mhm.
one, and so decisions are made along the way, depending on the circumstances, depending on, I don't know,
Yeah. Yeah.
happenstance.
I mean, you're talking about the journey of any entrepreneur, right? You think, oh, I'll do A, B, and then C, D, E will follow.
Mm,
But then you go to A, and then you realize there is X, Y, Z you have to decide, and then P, Q, R you have to decide, and there's no,
precisely.
nothing is as easy as you thought
But
it
that's the
would be.
excitement of it
Yeah,
because it
yeah,
gives you
yeah.
opportunities that you didn't know existed.
And that's precisely, you can never go back and say, if I didn't do that, what would it have been?
Yeah.
Because if you didn't do that, there would have been five other doors and don't know what you would have chosen. And, actually, when you were speaking at Inc., you said something very interesting that there's a Finnish lab that's investing millions to do what our Indian artisans have done, with clay pots and moon cycles, etc. So, what would you say in today's world for the young scientists or the entrepreneurs or whatever to really learn from history? What kind of bridges you think the young scientists should look at what has already happened in the past?
I
So, tell
wouldn't
us a little
say
bit
just
about
for
this
young
Finnish lab.
scientists. Sorry,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say just for young, I would say it's for everybody. I think we've specialized and fragmented knowledge too much. We need to integrate it so that we're aware that all these things are part of a whole. It's like um, engineers now needing to do ethics. You know,
Yeah.
as they design self-driving cars, we need
Yes.
to realize that all these things belong together. And
Right.
that's why I'm for an education that covers all the disciplines.
Right. Right.
Going
And I
back to the Renaissance man, the whatever you want to call him.
Right, right. No, I think especially this thing you talk about, I mean, even in construction of homes, etc., there is so much wisdom from the past of that we should really look at, learn the best and then discard the bad, but really learn the best. And finally, a question about your personal thing. You split your time between Switzerland and India for many decades now. So, in some ways, they're very different. In some ways, people are the same everywhere. So, tell me a little bit about what did you learn with this constant going back and forth between two cultures.
I don't know that I learned. I think I grew, because you realize that in Switzerland everything is perfect. In India it's less than perfect. It was like switching gears. We were
Yeah.
never allowed to criticize anything. That's how it was. And
Mm-hmm.
that's fine. And you just learn the energy is different. The whole, and it's only a growing. I describe us, because now we've lived, gosh, more than 50 years outside the country. But I think of myself as a banyan tree where the main root was in India, and then aerial roots grow out of there and then go back down into the ground. So you only grow, you get
Mm-hmm.
bigger, your world is bigger, your horizon is bigger. And then, as you said, you realize that people are the same everywhere. So there's a certain
Mm-hmm.
excitement that you take with
Yeah.
you, and that
Yeah.
nourishes you.
Yeah. So there is some questions, and not questions, suggestions. We have Swati Singh saying that, bioenzymes make paper more strong. So have you looked at that, or anything? Is
I'm
that
not
something?
good at additives. I was thinking about the process after our first conversation. And one of the mucilage is what you put into paper pulp to make it stronger. And one of the mucilages that was used was okra soaked in water. Now, we all know when we're cutting okra that it's sticky, but I never thought of it as a scientific term. So, what are bioenzymes? They're probably putting it in anyway, but they don't think
Yeah.
of them as bioenzymes. These are all big
Uh,
words for something
yeah.
that one just does.
Uh-huh.
I
Yeah.
don't know. I'm not a
Right.
scientist.
Yeah, no, but I think it's sort of, it was a suggestion. Maybe it's, if somebody is looking at paper, as we move forward, we can look at some of the new developments that are coming to see what might make sense,
I
etc.
think what might make sense is to allow the master paper makers to show you how they did it, because they never
Right.
thought about it. They have it
Mm-hmm.
in their fingertips. If one recorded that, because just getting that sideways motion took me many, many hours of
Mm-hmm.
videoing, because I always missed that bit. They do it as an instinct, they don't even think about it. And
Mm-hmm.
suddenly that was my aha moment, that
Mm-hmm.
that's what makes you. So it's showing a bit more respect rather than coming down on things with the force of science. Of course, we need science, but not
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
aggressively. A bit more
Right.
respectfully would be my advice.
Right. And I think there are questions about, it's a general conversation about, uh, there's a bunch of practices we had in the past, like I was talking about letter writing and something which is pretty much gone, because you can send a message and the other person gets it immediately. And then at the same time, there is a whole generation that only knows how to look at a screen. They're digital natives, right? They have no idea what anything, tactile or anything, to do with the past. As we move into this new world, Nina, what are the things, you think we should preserve from the past? What are the things you really work to preserve from the past for your grandchildren? Make sure they are in touch with it. And what are the things we have to, just let go?
I've just been going through all my documents, all my films, all my archive, which sounds like a big word and it isn't. And I was just thinking, in this digital world where technology is changing so quickly and becoming
Mm-hmm,
obsolete so quickly, I'm not sure whether the word archive is going to remain. So, how are we going to record something for posterity? All our
mm-hmm,
photographs are on our phones. If I
mm-hmm.
want to show somebody something and that technology doesn't work, I have no other means until it's
Correct.
printed on paper, until it's printed in a format that cannot change. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. It's a question I'd like a younger person to answer.
Yeah, I mean, actually, it's very interesting. Before, when we had cameras, we would take it to somewhere, print the photos, put it in an album, and when somebody came, you showed it. Now everything is on the phone,
Exactly.
right? And literally, if something happens to your iCloud storage or the phone, it's kind of gone. So I've
Yeah,
seen some of my nieces and nephews, what they do is once a year they take all their best photos and print a book and
exactly.
keep it, like. So I think as we move forward, there is a room for the old and new to coexist,
Precisely,
and
precisely. It's
to
not an either or. And I think that's what we need to remember. Just
yeah,
find a new place for it. It's like the bicycle. When you got the
yeah,
Ferrari, the bicycle didn't become obsolete. You found a
yeah.
room for it. And it
In
works.
fact, in fact, if you extend the same example, bicycling has come back in a big way
Yeah,
as like now people want to travel across continents on a bicycle. They want to do long. It's not just like getting me from one place to the other. Now there's a
exactly.
mountain bike and a regular bike, and there's a long distance bike and a short distance bike, and there's just so, and the bikes that get you from place to place in a city instead of taking a thing. So I think it's a very interesting, uh, example you gave in terms of when a new technology comes, not only that the old technology doesn't need to go, it could be redefined. Maybe we
Precisely.
can make it more fashion. It's sort of, your wedding invitation should be on a handmade paper, hand lifted paper, or your journal should be printed, a gift you give to your parents could be done on a handmade paper. So if
Mhm.
you revive it in a way that it becomes
Precisely.
a,
Precisely.
a
In a
great
special way.
experience in a
Yeah,
special way,
absolutely. It's become too
So,
everyday, which is why we got rid of it. So if we
correct,
can make
correct.
it unique, special, maybe it'll, I hope you're right. I'd love to see it come back.
Yeah. So, what are when you look out there, Neeta, what are the things that you would like to be part of in the future? What are is it like music, or is it, I mean, fine arts, or is it you will continue to do with paper, or what attracts your
I
attention
think
now?
what has been underlying in everything I do is an understanding of our legacy as a people, as a human race. And what
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to be more involved in is something that brings us together. Because,
Mm-hmm.
living in Zurich, it's been an incredibly international place to live. And yet I've discovered that as people, we're all the same. Our educational backgrounds might be different, our cultural backgrounds might be different, but as people, we are the same. And I would just wish, and I'm sure everybody else does, that we remember that we bring
Mm-hmm.
that back into focus.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What makes us people? We've got our heritages in ancient Egypt as much as it is in India,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
in contemporary America as much as it is in India.
Uh-huh.
Past,
Yeah.
present, future becomes us, or we become it. I
Yeah. 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 And I think, I mean, part of the reason, as we wrap up, I want to say part of the reason I wanted to have you on this is that, like sometimes when we see entrepreneurs, it's sort of like they take one thing and they go deeper into it, one technology or whatever. And there are some who just uh, do different serial entrepreneurs who do different things, etc. And you've been one of those people. You're like a detective, like you just took one and you went deeper and deeper and deeper. Maybe 80-20 rule, you were supporting other things as well, but this became something in which you read books, you published books, you revived institutions, you created stores. So I really wanted to acknowledge the journey of you, and you're very quiet about it. I mean, we don't read about you that much. You really keep a very low profile while all the work you have done has lived out there.
I don't know. I've enjoyed it, and I wish that everybody would have the opportunity to just enjoy what they're doing. A
Yeah,
little bit
yeah.
of passion helps a lot, and curiosity.
And I think as we move into this digital world, as we move into all this, it's really important to preserve this tactile, the ability to do things with hands, the ability to do things as a group. So I still say that the experience we had with you of 20, 25 people working together to create paper was one of the most magical experiences. And I really want everybody to go through such things and understand what it means. So thank you so much for your time,
Pleasure.
Neeta. I
Thank you,
know
Lakshmi.
that you travel all over the world, and it means a lot to have you. And I think it's important to bring this perspective when we get very, into our world, which is totally, 2D screens and keyboards. It's important to preserve what we touch as well. So thank you very much for
Thank
that.
you, Lakshmi.
Okay.